Today's episode is brought to you by Rauland. For over 80 years, Rauland has been providing innovative critical communication solutions for hospitals and schools. Visit them on the web at www.rauland.com.
Welcome to the latest episode of CarePoints. I'm your host, Kenny Schiff, Chief Marketing Officer for Lone Star Communications, the Alero Solutions Group, and our latest family member, Promobix. Today's episode is part of my continuing series of conversations with my collaborators at Lone Star, customers, partners, and notable folks in the tech industry. Thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to another great conversation with my guest. Hey, today's a special day. The day we are recording is October 14th, 2025, and it is Lone Star Communication, our parent company's, the beginning of its 35th year. So 35 years ago today, Lone Star opened its doors. And in celebration of that, we're going to be talking to somebody from Rauland, or Amatec Rauland, and Lone Star's success over its 35-year history is largely tied to its relationship with Rauland. So today we celebrate Rauland. And what I'm going to do, just as for fun, I used to work for Rauland, and for those of you that are watching at home as opposed to just listening, you're going to see me hold up a piece of swag that I was part of developing for the Rauland Owners Managers Conference in 1998, which Lone Star would have attended. And I'm so happy to kind of close the circle, if you will. And I'm going to be talking to Rob Gorelik today, and Rob Gorelik is on the education side mostly of the house. And when I started at Rauland, that's where I started. So it's a special, especially meaningful podcast today. So we are talking to Rob Gorelik. Rob is the Senior Product Manager at Rauland, and he's been there for over 11 years. And he leads the development and lifecycle management of Telecenter, which is largely used in schools, but we've been having a lot of conversations about people applying it in hospitals as well. Rob focuses on product innovation, customer application support, and strategic sales enablement. He knows education super well, and anybody knows about Rauland knows that that's a place that Rauland has a significant legacy, which is carrying through to today. He's committed to delivering technology that enhances school safety and security, and we're going to kind of tie in and talk quite a bit about safety and security today, which is top of mind for everybody. So welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Kenny. Thank you for having me.
So Rauland has, as I mentioned, a long-standing legacy in education, over 80 years. What does that kind of longevity mean in a space that's constantly evolving?
Rauland has a commitment to innovation, and I think that's represented by the technologies we've designed for decades. Rauland has humble beginnings in the radio business, and then in fact we manufactured communication systems used in World War II. And over the years we entered the school communication space and then in the healthcare communication space. And over the decades, through various innovative platforms and patents, we are the leader in both markets. We continuously innovate. We want to design new solutions, be the premier brand in cutting-edge innovations for schools and hospitals.
All right, great. So education has changed a lot in the 80 years that Rauland has been in the space. The type of solutions that Rauland would have provided 80 years ago were quite different than they were today. And in the 60s, there was quite a bit of market broadening, and technology as a whole started to become fairly commonplace in schools. And initially for Rauland, that was more about communication than anything else. So, and in the earliest days, there were analog speakers all over the place. Today, we're using IP-based technology. Why don't we talk a little bit about the evolution? So you started in a place of kind of doing point-to-point communication, and now it's turned into a lot more than that.
Well, technology advances, and we need to advance with it. We need to design with the times. Microcomputer technology, semiconductor technology has brought forth the ability to innovate and offer these solutions. So we kept with it and we designed for it. And what we have today is an IP-based solution that our predecessors could only dream of, right? So we had the legacy, the analog, the copper-wired speakers in the classrooms. And while Rauland was extremely successful in designing those, we needed to innovate and modernize so we could keep the forefront of school safety communications.
And one of the things that I've come to learn over the last few months as we've started to work fairly closely together is that it's not an all or nothing situation. So schools don't always have significant budgets to spend on modernizing, even if they want to. Sometimes they have to make do with what they have. So it's not only an IP-based technology, it could be both, right? So talk a little bit about that, how Rauland is meeting the customer where the customer is at.
Yeah. So imagine years ago when you had to replace a communication system. You had speakers to the rooms, wiring in the walls, and you had to rip and replace the entire platform. You don't need to do that anymore, particularly with Telecenter. You can go full IP. New constructions, it works well with new construction projects where at planning, they're already going to have IP wiring to every room. But not every school is designed that way, and not every project is implemented that way. So you can go in a retrofit, a remodel, utilize as much of the system, legacy system, as you have, put a Telecenter U on top, give it the smarts.
Yeah, we'll probe on that a little further because there's all kinds of creative things that can be done. And the interesting thing about Rauland is, as a reseller-based organization, a lot of what you can do involves the collaboration and the creativity that the resellers bring to the mix. So Lone Star being one of them, and your ability to work with the reseller to creatively solve for perhaps a very large school district, like in Lone Star's territory, the Austin City Schools is over 100 buildings. And that was a collaboration between the customer, Lone Star, and Rauland to meet a unique set of capabilities. And specifically, and Austin is a fairly large city, Telecenter, the flagship educational product line for Rauland, is in 90% of the largest U.S. school districts. So why is that, and what problems is Rauland solving that others aren't?
I think that's a reflection on our partnership with companies like yours, Kenny, with Lone Star Communications, but also our role in the communities, using companies such as yours, but being the advisor, being present throughout the process, offering guidance to the customers through these projects. I think that's what sets us apart from a lot of other products and a lot of other companies out there, that we want a seat at the table because we care. We care about what schools are buying and how they're implementing these solutions. And large school districts, as a characteristic of our solution, we can grow our product throughout those large districts, as in Austin ISD.
Yeah, and one of the conversations we've been having as we look at communicating with our customers about the capabilities of the platform is this notion of enterprise. And schools as a whole may not necessarily use the word enterprise, but if you're looking at 100 schools, you're all of a sudden looking at a managed solution across multiple buildings. So when you look at the sort of school district landscape, you might have a school district that has one school.
Yep.
You might have a larger one that has 10 or 20 schools, or you might have as many as 100 or more. And Rauland made a decision to look at the enterprise in the same way that it's done in healthcare, meaning that this core technology could cascade wherever it needed to go within the district, within the enterprise. Why don't you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah. So Rauland fits every size school district that you described, whether it's that single private school or whether it's a mega district of 100 facilities. But the advantage with Telecenter U is that you're only using one server, and it's a centralized server. So consider all the maintenance visits to each facility to reprogram, retap the speakers all the time in driving to each of the facilities. That operational cost adds up when you have so many buildings. With Telecenter, everything's done remote. A technician from their office, from the school's office, could reprogram all 100 buildings, reconfigure the audio volume, the programming, all the automated alerts from a centralized server, reducing costs and adding a lot of convenience just by having the system.
So the last 5 or 10 years there's some pretty significant shifts in schools, school technology, and also the kind of infrastructure that people might even consider. What's changed in that time?
What's changed really is the need for modernization at all these schools across the country that are decades old. They have solutions in place. Maybe some of them are operational, maybe some of them are not. But how they implement the new technology is critical to their budget, the CapEx budgets. So a school can leverage installed network infrastructure, installed cabling infrastructure, and they could plan out or phase out how they install the Telecenter U. It doesn't have to be all at once, all up front, but they time out their implementation phases with going full IP up front, phased implementation over years, so they can manage their budget, they can manage the implementation costs and the implementation timeline. We give them the ability to be flexible in that way so they could use the product as they see fit.
Rauland's in a trusted advisor to school districts, has been in that business for over 80 years, has a very tight network of local resources to work with the customer. And safety is paramount from a parent standpoint, from a community standpoint, and there are so many things that are happening on a day-to-day basis. So Rauland systems like Telecenter help bridge the preparedness divide. And especially in the context that not every school or every time of day is the same. So how is Telecenter helping in that regard?
Automation. At its core, Telecenter helps automate emergencies. We take the human error element out of a school district's method of implementing their safety goals and achieving their safety goals. So every school district across the country has an emergency response plan for various emergencies, an intruder, weather, etc. We offer them the tools to implement the type of plan that they need for their specific schools. An elementary school might have a different response plan than a high school. A small school might have a different response plan than a large school. But at its core, Telecenter automates a school district's emergencies, and we offer that to customers and help them implement it, help cater the solution to meet their needs.
And there's an inherent creativity to what can be done, but I think the key thing about the automation piece is that it's replicatable and it's consistent. So one of the things that in our kind of prep work, we talked about the telephone game. So let's kind of roll to that, because it's a perfect example of how this conceptual and infrastructure framework pushes past how it would have been done traditionally. So how do we eliminate the telephone game in emergencies, and why is Telecenter's special sauce so relevant in regard to that?
Yeah, right. Eliminate the telephone game. So put yourself in the shoes of a teacher. You need to reach the front office. One of your students forgot their lunch, right? How do you do that? Or how did you do that in years past? There's a call station in the room. You reach the front office secretary, have to tell them something, send the student down to the front office secretary. But what if it's IT related? What if you need medical assistance? You need to reach the nurse. We want the solution to be workflow optimized. Reach the right people. If you need a nurse, use the workflows to contact the nurse. If you need the front office, use the workflows to contact the front office. If you don't need to reach anybody and you just need audio alerts, visual alerts, use the corresponding workflows to achieve that. You don't want to have to bottleneck the front office secretary to answer every little call for every little scenario through a school day. There's a lot. There's a lot that happens on any given school day, particularly if there's emergencies occurring or incidents like that, fighting, for example. So use the technology to your benefit to automate all that. Automate the workflows. Automate the type of communication that needs to get to the right people at the right time.
And the automation in a kind of trivial communication thing, it's convenient. But when we're talking about a threat or an emergency situation, one doesn't have to think to leverage the capabilities of the system. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Every school district in the country, they're practicing and performing drills, emergency drills, this scenario, that scenario, and so on. But there's a lot of steps through that whole response protocol, a lot of individuals involved. And while it's good that they're practicing and they're conducting these drills on a monthly or quarterly basis, there's an element of human error that could be introduced when one staff member executes on a plan and another staff member executes on the second phase of that plan. If you eliminate the human error by using the product to automate each of one of those steps, then you're not going to have any mistakes. You're not going to have any miscues in the emergency response. One example, Kenny, that you and I discussed recently is the scenario where a school district with a great emergency response plan uses a walkie-talkie by the principal in step one. And they drilled and drilled and drilled on this. What happens when they practice that drill with the local police department? Step one requires the principal to make an announcement over the walkie-talkie. During the panic and buzz of the simulation, the principal dropped the walkie-talkie and it tumbled under a cabinet. The whole protocol fails after step one. It's unfortunate. But with Telecenter, with automation, you don't need to worry about human error. You don't need to worry about that dropped walkie-talkie or the dropped microphone, or in real cases, trembling voice on the intercom. You have clear communication throughout your building, executing on all the necessary plans that you need to.
Yeah, and we all know that schools sometimes have substitute teachers or substitute personnel, and those people may not be privy to all the protocols. And by having this automated and clearly triggerable, all the things that need to happen can happen. In our last back and forth, you kind of suggested a real world example. Let's paint some pictures for our audience, some of whom may not be watching, about how Telecenter was used to deal with a real life threat situation.
So everybody always thinks about an intruder entering the building, and while that is scary and that is never anticipated, never expected, and always unplanned for, think about the types of incidents that occur or may occur on a more regular basis. We have non-custodial parents, divorced parents all over the country, and each has their specific days to pick up their students, to pick up their children from the school. So here's an incident where a non-custodial parent, it wasn't their day to pick up the student, and they picked them up from school. The student went home with mom or dad. Well, the staff members at the school didn't know that. They thought the student was missing. They had to implement a lockdown in the school because there was a child unaccounted for.
So Lone Star in our neck of the woods is working with customers who have deployed Telecenter use kiosks and signage. And that was an important consideration for them. First of all, why don't you tell us a little bit about what that looks and feels like from a customer standpoint, the functionality it provides, and why the customer from a use case standpoint wanted to implement that part of the system.
Visual communications is one of the pillars of Telecenter U. It's not just audio, it's not just alerts coming out of speakers and hallways, but students and staff rely on visual communications to know what's going on, know how to respond, know where to go during various emergencies. With our kiosk and message board technologies, you have those written alerts, those emergency response instructions. In this particular case, with your customer, in fact, it was a school for the deaf. A school where the entire student body and the majority of the faculty, they're hard of hearing. They can't rely on audible communications for their emergency response. They rely on visual communications, reading the instructions during an alert, seeing the strobe lights, the active visual cues, using the emergency response protocols on the classroom kiosks. They rely on these visual cues because they're not going to hear it. And it was critical to them that they have a method of visual communications in the emergency response plan, and Telecenter U fit the category on the type of technology they needed to buy.
And they were able to essentially use the same engine that a school that didn't have those needs. And this really was just a creative deployment and application of the Telecenter U platform.
Yeah. I should add, it's a longtime customer of Rauland's, customer of Lone Star's. So as a respected technology partner, as Lone Star is a respected advisor of this school district, we were able to have these discussions and show them these various innovations that our platform could bring to them. The district has already implemented Telecenter at many of their facilities, so extending the functionality to this additional school was not a burden to them, and the products made sense for what they were using it for.
The great thing about this School for the Deaf example is it shows how Telecenter U core capabilities was leveraged in a creative way for a slightly different use case. All the same elements, really, but what's different about it is really the outputs. The visual aspects of Telecenter U are very attractive because it allows them to get the sort of orchestrated automation, multimodal communication pieces all in one place, but uniquely applied for a particular use case. So let's paint a picture for people listening or watching at home about what it looks like from a staff perspective, but also what students or visitors might experience. And I'll ask you to specifically describe some of the components and what they might look like so that people understand.
Yeah. The Classroom Kiosk is our newest product. It's a touchscreen device installed in the wall, always available, always on, always charged, and it helps initiate workflows and emergency initiation protocols. So in the case with this customer, they relied on visual displays for various workflow initiations, in this case, emergency initiations. But more than that, the Classroom Kiosk displays an emergency response protocol. What are you supposed to do in certain types of events? Now, in the case of this particular customer, they need the written instructions. They needed to see it on the message board displays, but also on these classroom kiosks. Every step of the event, every step of the protocol, 1 through 10, 1 through 20, always there and always available to them.
Right, and always up to date.
And always up to date. In many cases, school districts in the country, all over the country, are using laminated binders that are stored maybe in the desk, maybe in a cabinet, maybe you don't remember where you last put it. But those binders contain critical information. What do you do in a fire? What do you do in a lockdown? What do you do in a lockout? And by having those instructions available to you on a device that's always on and you know where it's located, when timing is critical, you need to have that information at your fingertips.
So we talk about some of the visualizations, and these were not parts of your traditional overhead paging system or bell and clock system that we would have deployed 30 years ago, although many districts still have that. So there is totally a technological evolution, but also a usage evolution. One of the things that's kind of new here is cloud, right? So in the past, each building was its own thing. We talked a little bit earlier about the idea of enterprise management, having the ability at a district level to manage multiple facilities from one server. But the cloud takes that to the next step. So why don't you talk a little bit about the Telecenter U cloud capability?
So the big benefit of Telecenter with the centralized server is that you have centralized management. 1 facility, 20 facilities, 100 facilities, all centralized, single server. Some school districts in the country may not have IT departments. They can implement and maintain these servers. So that responsibility is on Rauland. Our Telecenter Cloud gives school districts the capabilities of Telecenter, all the functionality and customization of Telecenter, but we manage and implement the server. We take that responsibility, we take that burden off of the school district so they could simply use the solution while we manage it.
And it's another case where we have a bridging of physical infrastructure, software and applications, which opens the door for lots of other capabilities, which is going to lead me to my next question. So mobile applications. So all of us carry smartphones today. That was not the case when I started at Rauland. That was only a daydream. And Telecenter has some unique capabilities in regard to that, especially in regard to dealing with other safety technology and what might be characterized as siloed mobile apps. Why don't you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. Telecenter can integrate with various technologies, mobility solutions, wearable solutions, access control, and so on and so forth. Schools are spending money on all this technology. And Telecenter U fits kind of in the middle. We work with these other solutions. We physically, whether through physical relays or through software APIs, we connect to all these great products so that you have a unified communications platform, a unified emergency response. By playing in the middle, we work with all these other products. So schools get more out of the solutions that they're buying for. They want these various products to work together, work in unison. They may have had a large investment on access control doors, the way they access the building every day. They want that connected to Telecenter. If there's an intruder at night, if the door is broken into at night, they want one system to trigger another system so everybody stays in the know.
So as we've been having conversations over the last few months, we have all kind of arrived at this sort of common understanding of what we call layers. So many of the things that you've talked about allow the school to go from a maybe fairly basic layer and bring new things onto, whether it's bridging old technology into the new, but now you're talking about integration. So would it be fair to say that Telecenter U is really an orchestration engine for emergency communications? Is that a good way to talk about it?
I think that's a fair way to describe it, yes.
So we've talked a lot about the nuts and bolts of this, and I have a bunch more questions in here that, I think they're fine, but really, you've been working on this stuff every day for 11 years. What stuff that I didn't cover that you think people need to know about in terms of the impact, value, capabilities of the platform that keeps you excited every day?
Yeah. I think Telecenter is very feature rich. A lot of great features that may be underutilized by customers. If they simply knew how much Telecenter could do for them, they could program it in a way that goes beyond what they're doing today, in creative ways, not necessarily emergency protocols, but even in their everyday communications. If they have burdened staff, let's use the front office secretary, that person's usually the one answering all the calls coming into the office. Now, if there's ways to make that person's life a little easier, program the system in a way to do that. If there's special events, special announcements, special activities happening on just any given day, I think you could use the Telecenter to automate that, make it a little more fun, and improve the flow of communications throughout the school.
Yeah, one of the interesting things for me is that when I started at Rauland in 1992, Telecenter was essentially sealed. There were no user applications of it. If you wanted something, you had to work with your reseller, had to send a guy with a tool belt out, and you'd have to program it in a fairly rudimentary kind of way. And that's what schools needed at the time. There's a lot of user friendliness to the platform and technology that didn't exist back then because the industry has changed, Rauland has changed. Why don't we just kind of finish up on that? So talk about the user experience of this platform in general and what's exciting about that.
Systems of the past, when they were designed, they were already fully committed to all the functionality that they'll ever have, and that was it. But Telecenter U is not like that. Telecenter U is modular. Telecenter U is evolving. We're continually adding new functionality to the software, more features that make school administrators' lives easier. And that's something that is exciting for us, that we're evolving the product. We're continually growing what it can do. And I think that benefits school districts in particular, but it says something on the evolution of Rauland's technology, that we always want to be doing more and providing more. And it lets our engineering team and our products team be creative here at Rauland in the design of our products. And it lets companies like Lone Star and many of our integration partners, it lets you be the central point of the relationship between us, the manufacturer, and school customers. They're continually coming to you, not asking, can I do this? But, hey, how do I do this? And you fill the role as the advisor, continually innovating and offering better innovation solutions out there.
Yeah, and I think that that's the most significant change in the my 30 years of being in and around this, is that if you want to do it, there's going to be a creative way to do it in a way that you could never possibly have imagined before. Like all these integrations, as an example, those were things that you would have to deal with one at a time. But now you probably have seen most or many of the situations that people want, and you're able to accommodate it.
It's almost become an expectation that solutions integrate with each other, which we do, and we're proud of that.
I'm so excited to have talked to Rob today. Rauland has a special place in my heart. I really cut my teeth in many respects and really put me in position to have what I do today. And interestingly enough, I'm doing a version of the job I did at Rauland back in the 90s. So thanks, Rob. It's been great talking to you, and it's great that the Telecenter brand is alive and well.
Thank you, Kenny. Thank you for having me, and I appreciate the opportunity.
Thanks so much for joining us today on CarePoints. I encourage you to hit the like button and subscribe so that you can get notified when we release our next episodes. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting service, Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, whatever your favorite platform is. And make sure to visit us on the web at www.lonestarcom.com/podcast. That's www.lonestarcom.com/podcast. You'll find all of our old episodes there. Thanks so much for listening, and looking forward to having you back soon.